Hey guys, it is finally time. We have Chen, the legendary brewmaster, is getting his rework. Chen has had a pretty rough history where he's gone from being this unkillable monster with a ridiculous shield to them releasing a lot of heroes with a lot of CC to where CC became a major piece of the meta for every major team comp, making it to where you could almost never get your brew off for a long period of time, and making it just generally difficult to play Chen. So, what have they done to Chen, and what are we going to plan out for him in terms of roles? Well, Chen has gotten a rework, and because Chen hasn't been in the meta for a long time and people have been playing a lot of Chen, we're going to treat every ability and every talent as a new thing. I mean, I will mention the ones that are newer and very interesting to talk about, but we're going to just go through every single talent and ability as if this was a new hero. To start off, let's go through his abilities. He still has Flying Kick, which is pretty straightforward. It's a very long-range ability that allows you to jump across a decent amount. So it's about the range of your average auto attacker, right? And you immediately will kick to the other side of the target. So it's a great move for kicking on the other side and then starting to body block to try to stop them from getting away. It's also just a pretty unique tool for jumping on a target and then using your W to slow them, and that W will then make it even easier to body block them there. So what does your W do? Let's turn off toggle cooldowns for a second. We'll talk about it. Your new W will drop down a keg, and it will deal damage, and it will slow them for 10% for 3 seconds, except for after 1.5 seconds, the slow goes up to 40%. So they're slowed for a little bit for 1.5 seconds, and then they're slowed for a little bit more after 1.5 seconds. And then if you use your W again, which you can use it after 1.5 seconds, you can then light them on fire, and if you light them on fire, it will make it to where the slow will, or the duration will increase. Actually, that's probably not until a talent that you pick up. But yeah, so you throw a W, and then your next fire, or your next one, will ignite it on fire. So it's a pretty unique way of dealing with Chen. They took both of his W and E and combined them together. My only complaint about this is how long it takes. Before, you used to be able to fire off your W and then immediately after fire off your E. Now you have to wait 1.5 seconds or 1 second to use the second portion of it. It uses 30 brew the first time and then 10 brew the second time. And it also does add to the duration of the slow, so I was not crazy. So it's definitely a cool talent. So the goal is essentially going to be jumping on them, slowing them, auto-attacking them, lighting them on fire to slow them even more, and then just doing a little bit more damage before maybe tossing out another Flying Kick. That is primarily how Chen is going to be played. He does now have a new thing called Stagger. Now, Stagger came from World of Warcraft, and it's this. It was a mastery passive that was done where all the damage you would be taking, a portion of it would be mitigated and then spread out over a duration. Now, this one is like super Stagger because it will actually prevent all of the damage that you're taking, and then you will get all of that damage spread out over the next few seconds. But you can drink and get a shield for the next 5 seconds, making it to where Stagger can essentially prevent all the damage for 3 seconds as long as you're willing to drink for a little bit after that. I mean, unless you're taking like a ridiculous amount of damage during Stagger. Now, the cool part about Stagger is that you can be jumping around in the team fight, and then you can jump away and use your Purifying Brew. So let's say, for example, we had a team fight over here, and I used a bunch of Stagger, and I used whatever. Let's toggle cooldowns and jump back over, use Stagger one more time. And as that's going, I took a lot of damage. I can be draining while I'm away from the fight now, and no longer in the range of the enemies. So it is actually a pretty cool concept that you can use on Chen to get yourself in a very rough fight and then jump away and then use your Fortifying Brew to keep yourself back up after using Stagger. And it's kind of a unique idea. I like it. on to his ultimate abilities. We'll talk about that when we get there. Actually, we'll do that right now. Let me just throw in random talents. So he still has Wandering Keg, which is an ability that you can use to push things around, and it pushes by quite a decent amount. So that's essentially how Wandering Keg works. The strategy of Wandering Keg is that normally you're going to jump behind a target and then keg them back into your team. So let's say, for example, we want to get this Anduin into tower range. What we're going to do is we're going to toggle cooldown, and then we're going to jump behind him, and then we're going to keep him in tower range for my team to kill. And that's essentially how Wandering Keg works. And in this case, we're going to body block him as well. But that's the primary goal for Wandering Keg, is to pull someone into your team or into your tower range by using Wandering Keg. His other ultimate ability that he has is Storm, Earth, and Fire. Storm, Earth, and Fire now has, it essentially, I'll start it off by just saying that it splits you into 3 different pieces and gives you 3 different abilities. You control all of these pieces together, and then all of your abilities you can only use once. So I can use the shield once, I can use the jump once, and I can use the fire buff, which gives movement speed, once. Now, there are some interesting things about the new version of Storm, Earth, and Fire. What Storm, Earth, and Fire does now is the last spirit ability you cast is empowered. And it's a really cool concept because now you can do some really cool engages with them. For example, if we turn on Storm, Earth, and Fire, and say we wanted to engage on this Anduin who's over there, we can start off by using Storm, Earth, and Fire right here. We can get movement speed from our E, and then we can use our shield, and we can jump on him and root him in place and take him out while we have that bonus damage. Now, I don't actually think we get the movement speed unless it's the final ability. Yeah, we don't get the movement speed unless it's the final ability. But if the final ability is your W, you get a root. And if your final ability is your E, you get movement speed. So there are a lot of benefits for using those because now you actually have a pretty powerful engage, even if you pick this ultimate, because you can jump in and you can root something. So once again, we pop Storm, Earth, and Fire. Let's say we're flanking with it. Storm, Earth, and Fire. And then we use E, Q, and then we root them in place. And we can immediately jump on them, and we can just start melting them down quite a bit. And you can see how much damage we did while he was rooted, about half of his health. And again, if we're rooting and jumping in, then our team can certainly be following up as well. And if your team's engaging, then what you can do is you can start off with your leap and your shield, and then end off with your E, giving yourself that movement speed and extra damage. So it'll look something like this. Q, jump, and then E. And then look at this DPS at level 20. We're doing about 800 DPS. Over the course of Storm, Earth, and Fire, we're at 5,000 or 6,000 damage. And it can be pretty brutal in a team fight. I mean, you take out a tank while also just bullying a lot of things. It also does reset your health. It doesn't reset your health. It gives you a different set of health bars. Now, if all of these die, you do die. So you got to be careful about AoE abilities. So those are his 2 ultimate abilities. Now let's get into the talents, and we'll talk a little bit about possible builds. So we're going to go through all of the talents first, and then we'll talk about the build that I'm looking at right now on Chen, and possibly seeing if there's anything else. Eye of the Tiger makes it to where basic attacks against bruise-soaked enemies deal 50% more damage, and you heal for 50% of the damage dealt, which is pretty cool. Allows you to play a little bit more bruisery. If you're jumping on people, you're constantly adding brew, increasing the duration of your brew, and auto-attacking them. You can get about 4 auto-attacks off with Eye of the Tiger, and so it allows you to be pretty aggressive with it. Just picking this talent alone, jumping in on a target, getting an auto-attack, a W, an auto-attack, an auto-attack, a W, an auto-attack, an auto-attack, does 2,300 damage to a target. Anduin, for example, has 3,798 health at this level, which means that you can do about half of a healer's health by just jumping in with just a level 1 talent. It's a pretty powerful talent if you're just trying to take quick trades against your enemy, and I think this is going to be the primary talent in the solo lane. His next talent is Regen Globes heal more. They heal for 100% more, as well as if you gather 15 Regen Globes, you will keep half of your shield indefinitely. Which is pretty nice because you can build up a shield and then you keep half of that shield. And so it's pretty cool. Storm Stout's secret recipe makes it to where basic abilities heal Chen when you hit a hero. My issue with this talent is it's only the first time that you hit a hero, meaning that you only heal for 2% here, possibly 2 to 4% here, 2 to 4% again, and that's it. So I think that you heal more by just going Eye of the Tiger and just hitting tanks. Level 4, Deadly Strike. Flying Kick no longer costs Brew. Additionally, its damage is increased by 100% when you have Brew on you. So if you're ever in a fight where you can use your Brew first and then charge in, use a W, a couple auto attacks, a W, a couple auto attacks, and then Brew and another Q, you could be increasing your damage by a considerable amount. Essentially by an extra 300 damage at this level. But at the same time, increasing your ignite damage by 25% could also be even more. Because at this level, your ignite does 186 plus 362, so about a little over 500 damage. So you add 25% more damage onto 500. That's an extra 150 damage. So if you're not getting that second strike off, and by that time you can get a second flame off too, both of these equal about the same amount of bonus damage. It just depends on if you want it single target and reduce the brew, or if you want it AoE and you still have a brew cost. Withering Flames reduces the spell power of the target, so if you're going more of a bruiser build against a couple mages, this could just be a great way to add utility. So damage, or utility. Also know that this increases the ignited damage by 25% on not just heroes. It's on anything, and it also increases the duration. So in terms of damage, I think that Accumulating Flame is the best bet, and it also adds to the macro value because it improves your ability to clear waves. So at this level, I think that Accumulating Flames is going to be the best one. Level 7, Gift of the Ox, increases the duration of Stagger's damage prevention. So instead of 3 seconds, it'll be 3.5. And reduces the amount of damage taken over time to 60% instead of 75%. This is by far the best answer to burst heroes on the enemy team, as well as it's just a generally powerful talent if you're using your stagger efficiently. Brewmaster's Balance. While at or above 50 brew, you gain 20 movement speed. While at or below 50 brew, you gain 20 movement speed. While at or above 50 brew, you regen an additional 39 health per second. That's a huge amount of health regen. If I click on this right now, my health regen is actually only 11. So that's effectively multiplying my my regen by 5. So it's a very, very powerful talent. A little under 5, 4.5. I don't know, somewhere in between there. Don't feel like doing math. So it's a great way to deal with enemies that are aggressively poking in the solo lane. So if you're worried about burst, Gift of the Ox is very powerful. If you're worried about poke, then Brewmaster's Balance is good. And Elusive Brawler you activate to gain movement speed as well as evade enemy basic attacks for 2 seconds. Your basic attacks also reduce this cooldown. So if you're laying against something like an Illidan, then this can be a really powerful talent for dealing with him. Even against something like an Imperious, dodging the his auto attacks effectively makes it to where he's not getting the trait value off of it either. That extra movement speed also allows you to get out of sticky situations. All 3 of these talents are great, and I think they will be situational pickups based off of what you're going to be doing. We've talked about his ultimate abilities. I'm really excited for Storm, Earth, and Fire, but Wandering Keg still seems like a great engage in a lot of situations. Level 13, Flying Kick slows enemies, and if you have shields, it slows enemies by 70%, which is pretty insane. I mean, if we look at this really quick, 70% slow is pretty crazy. We'll jump on him and look at that slow. It's almost like a root for a second. Now, it's a short duration, so that's the downside to it. Increases Keg Smash's slow amount by 10%, which means that it will start out at 10% and then it goes up to 50%, which is pretty cool. So this makes your overall slow just better, and it also increases the duration by 0.5 seconds. Ring of Fire, after igniting enemies, become bathed in a fiery aura, dealing 132 damage every second to nearby enemies for 5 seconds. A pretty decent chunk of damage. By picking this talent and sticking near enemies, you're effectively adding something like 600 damage to the fight. And enough to share. Purifying Brew instantly grants Chen a shield that absorbs a blank amount of damage each second, grants nearby ally heroes a shield that absorbs a certain amount up to 901. So it gives you a burst shield and then gives your allies shield as well if you want to be using your brew near your allies. So if you want more damage, if you want more CC, you can more CC you go for these, more damage you go for this, and more survivability for your team, you're going to be going for this. All talents that I think can be viable in certain situations. Level 16, increase the range and reduce the cooldown. Already a rather large range for your jump. Now you also have the reduce the cooldown every time an enemy hero takes damage from being ignited. So you can reduce the cooldown considerably, because if you ignite something, they're going to take damage 4 or 5 times. So it'll shave off quite a lot of cooldown. Celerity, basic attacks against stunned, rooted, or slowed heroes, reduces the cooldown of stagger by 1.5 seconds and grants Chen 15 armor for 3 seconds. This is by far the biggest tanking version of the build, because if you do pick up Gift of the Ox and you pick up Celerity, your duration plus the cooldown reduction is going to make it to where you can have your trait going for quite a while as long as you're hitting targets that are low. So for example, if I pick up Celerity right now, and let's say I go in here and I use my E and then I use my W and I'm auto attacking, I have my E on me, and then I shaved off a decent chunk of about half the cooldown. So your uptime is rather large. I mean, whenever people are trying to fight you, you can almost always have your E available. So it's definitely an idea. And if you can also put shield, you can also charge, get that slow, and reduce the cooldown even further if you did pick up the talent that makes it to where your flying kick slows targets. So you could effectively use your E, jump on someone, reduce the cooldown of your E, put your W out, reduce the cooldown of your E. Not to mention, if you're combined with anyone on your team that's constantly slowing, then you'll have, I would say, at most a 30%, maybe a 40% uptime on your invulnerability. And to have that would be incredible. And then finally, we have combo strikes. Every third basic attack against the same target deals 75% bonus damage, while Chen has shields from Purifying Brew, and for 2 seconds after, he gains 50% attack speed. So if we're going for damage builds, that's definitely going to be a talent that is going to be looked at. Level 20, we have an upgrade for his keg, increasing the movement speed from 70% to 125%, and grants you armor for its duration, so you are harder to kill while you're using your keg. A pretty strong upgrade for picking people apart and spreading out their team without needing to worry about anything else. Elemental Conduit. All of your spirits have 100% more health, so they're a lot tankier, and all of their abilities are empowered. So now you can gain that movement speed and root and get a giant shield for the duration of it, because the empowered shield is pretty strong. Purifying Brew. Now you gain Unstoppable while you're using Purifying Brew, so you can't be interrupted. So if you're in the build where you're giving shields to your allies, it could be a very powerful talent to get that. Or you can get Fortifying Brew, gives maximum health. If you're channeling Fortifying Brew for its full duration, you gain 20% bonus health and 20% bonus damage for 25 seconds. This can be a pretty interesting talent if you're going for a DPS build, because now you can play a little bit more aggressive. So let's talk about the possibility of builds on Chen, and we'll try to do it rather quickly so we can finish this video up. So let's reset talents really quick and let's talk about it. I think that the first major build that we're going to be looking at is a Bruiser DPS build, where we pick up Eye of the Tiger to do the bonus damage on brew-soaked enemies. We pick up the Accumulating Flame, so we do bonus damage to waves, so we can double soak, and bonus damage to enemy heroes. At this level, all of these are defensive talents, so there's nothing that we really need to focus primarily on, but having that extra movement speed would make it kind of nice. Getting this one, we're going to be going for more damage because we want the damage, so we're going to be picking up Storm, Earth, and Fire. And then at this level, we're going to be getting a Ring of Fire for the extra damage, followed by the combo strikes, so we do that bonus damage and bonus attack speed. And then finally, at this level, it's up to you. The improved could increase your damage and abilities during team fights with this, or if you're expecting more fights or happening more often than here and there. Say you're on a map that has fights that are happening more often than every, 100 seconds, then you may be going for Energizing Brew. But I would say for most situations, it's going to be a lot safer to be picking up Elemental Conduit and using it to win objectives. So this build is pretty much just a standard DPS build. You're going to try to keep Brew going for as long as you can, while also keg smashing. So the fights might start something like this, where you get some Brew going, and you see that there's a fight going about where you want to, you're going to charge in, you're going to use your W, get that bonus attack speed, use your W again, get that bonus attack speed, and then charge them, and there you go. So over a short fight, we did about 6,000 damage at 600 DPS, about 5 to 600 DPS. At 600 DPS, you can melt down a tank in 10 seconds, and you can melt down something like an Anduin in 5 to 6 seconds, 5 to 7 seconds. So in general, that is a big chunk of DPS that you can do right away. To kind of show you really quick, we'd be seeing a fight going, see this Anduin out of position, we might get our brew together, we might charge in, auto attack, do your W, auto attack, and look at this Anduin just drop. I mean, that is an incredible amount of damage that you can do. So if you can catch someone out of position, and that's not even the highest DPS, Energizing Brew would be the highest DPS. This build is also utility. If you end up taking a team fight, we're going to be using our ultimate, and then we're going to be jumping in, and then using our E. And look at this DPS that we're doing, 1,000 DPS. So if we're in a team fight, this is going to be absolutely terrifying. You can also give that shield over the duration too. Because if it's empowered, then you get the shield over the entire duration. You're going to be impossible to kill in this. So let's toggle cooldowns again, and let's start off the fight as if we were doing this as an objective. We would start off with Storm, Earth, and Fire. We would root him, and then we would get our bonus attack speed off, possibly get the shield off for the full duration. There's no way we're dying out of this, and Anduin is dead. That's how fast that's going to be in team fights, and you'll have this for the duration, and when the team fights end, then you get to go right back into Chen's damage build. So I generally think this build is going to be a very good build to get into because it's just a ton of damage, it's a ton of utility, and you can use your stagger more defensively without needing to be too tanky. So that is the build. Let's look at some of his other builds really quick. So I think there's a utility build, maybe kind of like the same reasons you might take like an E-build Leoric, where you go for, again, I still think this is just a better talent at this tier, but let's go with the Brew Lasts Indefinitely. We're going to lower their spell power, and then we're probably going to go with the movement speed, Wandering Keg. So again, this is a utility build. Then we're going to be picking up the shield for our allies, as well as probably, we could go with anything here, really. Maybe we'll just want to jump around a little bit easier, and then we can either upgrade this or we can go for the Unstoppable so that we're unstoppable while we're shielding our allies. You can see we're just unstoppable at the beginning whenever we're shielding our allies, and it makes it a lot harder for them to kill. Whenever you see a team fight starting, you can lower the spell damage of the enemies, and you can also just immediately get the enemies into your team and use this at the same time. So this would probably be the utility build. I don't know how good it's going to be. And then his tanking build, I don't think that he's ever really going to be a main tank because his engages are a little tough. But let's say you just needed it. You're running a main tank that's not as tanky, and you want just that extra beef to survive. Then I think we're probably going to be going with the freshest ingredients, followed by reducing their spell power, followed by Gift of the Ox. Probably Wandering Keg, but you can go with Storm, Earth, and Fire as well. It's very situational. Let's say Wandering Keg. And then for the extra survivability, we're going to be getting enough to share. So we get that instant one into Celerity, into upgrading probably the ult. Or you can go with the maximum, or even Unstoppable if you're trying to be really tanky. And that's generally what it would be for this build if you just wanted to be as tanky as possible. And you'd kind of just walk into a fight, you'd use your E, you'd use your W's, and then you'd get your shield, and you'd shield through all of the damage that you took, and then you'd get your W's out, and this build would just be rather tanky. I mean, you'd be able to survive in team fights for a long period of time. You could even just take a tower if you want to, but I don't think this is going to be the build either. I think that while it's nice to be very unkillable, you're not doing as much. I think that first build is definitely going to be the scariest build, the most powerful build. But I've definitely been wrong before. I mean, I tend to be correct on supports, and I tend to be wrong when it comes to some of the other roles that are out there. But I don't know. I mean, it's a very scary build to be able to do that much DPS without even taking the bonus damage talent at 20 and without using my ults seems really good. And that's the build I'll probably be messing around with Chen, is just that damage build, jumping on people, doing a lot of DPS, and using the stagger just as a survivability tool in case they start trying to peel off. Then I can jump away and heal through the stagger damage that I would have taken. Either way, that is new Chen. Tell me what you guys think. Do you think Chen's going to be back in the meta? Do you think he's scary enough? Or do you think Imperius is still just outclasses him in that situation? What do you guys think about Chen right now? Toss it in the comments below. Are you excited that Chen's finally getting a rework? Or are you mad that you liked Chen's old playstyle? I personally feel like you can play just like Chen's old playstyle if you want to, but now you have the possibility of just being a little bit scarier. So I don't know. That's what I'm looking at right now, and that is Chen, the legendary brewmaster. Thank you guys so much for watching, and feel free to check out my other videos.